All right, let's talk about walking away from the left. Many of you guys know that I was a walkaway Democrat. Now, as much as my libertarian friends like to call me a Republican, I was a Republican for about 15 minutes, and mostly it was just to troll Lauren Witzke. I was never really a Republican. I've never been a conservative. The Republican Party, I think, is just as bad as the Democratic Party, but I was a Democrat for 20 years. And how I got started in this whole crazy space, for those of you who are not familiar with my story, is I was a Democrat for 20 years. I went to a Trump rally. I realized how much the media lied to me. I wrote an article about it on the internet. It blew up beyond anything that I ever thought would happen to me. And here I am 2 years later. 2 years later. What a crazy journey it's been. And so when I see articles like this that are about leaving the left, I like to take a look at them because it's a funny thing. It's like all of the walkaway experiences that I've encountered over the last couple of years, every single one has similarities. And there's obviously some nuanced differences as well, but the story is the same over and over and over and over and over again. And this story appeared in Broad and Liberty. Thank you to the local supporter who brought this to my attention. It's from a guy named Jonathan Gilmore, Why I Left the Left. So let's go ahead. We're going to read this, but before we jump into it, make sure you mount that like button for me, guys, on whatever platform you're watching on, and make sure you are subscribed as well. I do these streams every day, post content every day except for Saturdays. Emphasize says the Halo rings ends all sentient life. Well, that doesn't sound like a good idea, Emphasize. I kind of like being alive. The Dewey Decimal System is a racist system that has to be dismantled along with grammar, math in the USA. Oh, I understand. You're speaking leftist. I understand, Emphasize. Thank you. And Emphasize says, I'm a Democrat now, got to balance the scales. Okay, so Emphasize walk towards the Democratic Party. You know, you got to do what you got to do, Emphasize. I appreciate it. All right, let me just make the font a little bit bigger. So you guys can read. That's big enough. That's pretty big. Shortly after I turned 19, I stood on the famous yellow footprints in the Marine Corps Recruitment Depot, San Diego, like so many Marines before me. As a gay man living in the conservative state of Idaho, I felt my fair share of discrimination, and as long as I trained alongside my black brothers and sisters, I learned that racism still exists. Those who commit it were swiftly and sometimes violently dealt with, usually by a white guy. The specific examples are better left unsaid. Shortly after I left the Marines, I began community college in Bellingham, Washington. I was quickly indoctrinated in liberal ideology. One of the most poignant memories involved my first diversity training class. I was a school employee, and my attendance was mandatory. The teacher, a heterosexual woman, explained the atrocities and abuse the LGBT community has encountered throughout history. Indeed, my kind have been persecuted for generations. She then explained how we, meaning gay and lesbian folk, prefer the term queer. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know what it is about me. I attract gay men like a magnet. I am always surrounded by gay men, and I really enjoy gay men. Like, if nothing else, they can teach me how to dress when, like, I cannot be left to my own devices. I'll wear the same damn thing every day. But I've always been around like lots of gay men, and I have yet to meet a gay man that likes calling himself queer. Does anyone else have that experience? Because if anything, at least the gay men, and I can't speak for lesbians because lesbians and I tend not to get along. No offense to lesbians. I'm sure you're a wonderful person, but it just tends not to work out well. Mostly because like lesbians usually like me for what I think are like obvious reasons. Obviously, like I look like a lesbian. I get it. But like for anyone who like has a lot of gay friends or maybe are gay yourself, does anyone like the term queer? Does anyone like being called queer? I have yet to meet a single one. Anyway, let's continue. Being that I'd only ever heard this term in a derogatory manner, I raised my hand to object. No, I do not like that term. Do not call me that. That's usually what's going on. Savrit says, Carlin, is our deep dive going to be through email? Yeah, Savrit, send me an email and we will work that out. The teacher quickly changed her tone and decided it's best that people define themselves, a wise move. But in doing so, she obliterated her own theory that the word queer was taken back by the queers. The next lesson was on white privilege. Here, the teacher told us we must follow one rule before we listen: assume everything is true. I'm not kidding. We were not to question the teaching. We were to listen passively. She wasn't asking us to stay silent during the lecture, a reasonable request. She was asking us not to question the teaching even after the lecture. If you guys remember back to, oh God, this is going back. This is going back. But you guys know that original Kate Slater UNH training that we watched during happy hour? Kate Slater's like an anti-racist trainer. She's like a Robin DiAngelo wannabe. White lady, of course. When Kate Slater was a graduate student at the University of New Hampshire, she gave a training to white employees at the University of New Hampshire in which she literally told white employees that their job was to shut up and listen. That was on the slide. I might even actually have the slide. Maybe I don't. No, I shut it down. But no, I do. Hang on, I'll show you guys. This is from a just a PowerPoint deck that I put together. But check this out. I'll stop sharing on this window for a second. Window. Check this out. This was a slide from Kate Slater's training. Show up, shut up and listen. Support and school yourself. She was saying exactly the same thing that this guy's talking about in his article. This was paid for by my taxpayer dollars. Fun times. Fun times. I love paying for crap like that that tells people to shut up and listen. That seems like a great investment of money. To summarize the lesson, we were taught that whites are the oppressors and people of color are oppressed. If you are white, you are racist, if not openly racist, implicitly. These types of lessons extended into a few classes I took in the community college and into the prestigious Cornell University, where I graduated with my bachelor's. That doesn't surprise me at all. Because I know people that have worked at Cornell and I know how absolutely woke that entire, I mean, just assume that every single college, unless we have evidence otherwise, has just been taken over by everything woke at this point. That's the only assumption that can be made. The topics included the idea that hedge money was the new form of slavery, i.e., the admiration of hard work is an idea from the ruling class hegemonically imposed on the working class to keep us working. All men, especially white men, are perpetrators of the patriarchy which impose brutal capitalism on society. Ding, ding, ding. There it is. It's always about capitalism. In every single training they do, it always comes back to them wanting to dismantle capitalism. Every single time. And the world is divided into oppressors and the oppressed. Whites are generally the oppressors. It would take hours to dive into each produced theory social justice academics have come up with, but the examples I used suffice. In other words, I am both the oppressor, a white man, and the oppressed, a gay man. I have privilege and yet I'm at a disadvantage. If it seems confusing, that's because it is. Well, sadly, no one's explained to him yet that gay men aren't really considered to be oppressed anymore. So if we get into intersectionality, there are hierarchies within intersectionality. So gay men are the least oppressed of all of the LGBTQNONOP or whatever the acronym is. Like gay men are the least oppressed. And then we have lesbians. And then for some reason, and I don't really understand why this is, like you have bisexual and also pansexual, which basically are kind of the same thing, but slightly different. It's the weirdest thing. But yeah, gay men are not even considered to be that oppressed anymore. AD says, how is that training not a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act? The lawsuit in Nevada by Gabrielle Clark and her son was a good example. That's not even the only training I have from UNH. UNH, faculty members at UNH were using UNH resources to lobby against the anti-CRT bill. So I don't know the answer to that. It doesn't seem legal to me, but I have both of those things. Besides the obvious contradictions in leftist academia, like the idea that gender doesn't exist except when it comes to a transgendered individual who wants to change their gender, there is a more sinister ideology. It seems to come about during the 2016, around 2016 during the contentious Trump versus Clinton election. It was the idea that if you truly follow and believe in leftism, a family that doesn't subscribe should be disowned. I followed through. I've always committed to what I believe. I stopped speaking to my family. I berated and mocked my siblings for not believing in white privilege. And I even went on to ostentatiously write about my dogmatic beliefs for 6 months at Philadelphia Gay News. I extended leftist ideology into my relationship with my husband. I would grow infuriated when he disagreed with the 2021 Black Lives Matter protests that turned violent upon many occasions. I'm sure he means 2020. I was upset, unhappy, and prone to conflict. And then I hit a breaking point. I find with a lot of walkaway stories, this breaking point happens. I know it happened with me, where I was like, I'd kind of started down the road of understanding that what was going on with all of my woke friends was crazy. And then all of a sudden, there was a point, I remember it specifically, where I decided I was going to make a post to fight back in the knitting wars. And if you don't know about the knitting wars, you need to go back and watch some of my old content. I'm not going to revive all that stuff here. But my breaking point for me was like, I remember the moment where I was like, I need to speak up because this is insanity. And I think everyone that goes through this has that type of inflection point. Without my family at my side and with the draconian lockdowns in effect, I experienced depression like I'd never experienced before. Well, that's what happens when you cut off all of your social relationships because of politics. I quit my job and I started therapy. Politics wasn't a part of my therapy. However, through it, I was able to see the error of my ways. I started to question my beliefs. Was capitalism so bad? Were all white people racist? If gender doesn't exist, why does the left demand we call trans people by the gender they identify with? On the economic side, I also had some questions. If capitalism was so bad, why has it lifted millions of people out of poverty all over the world while communism has killed time and time again? If our welfare system helps lift people out of poverty, why does it need expanding? Savret says, those deconstructionist ideologies are a tool that is used to pre-program people through avenues dictating how to just react in their life encounters a specific way, essentially being pre-offended. That's exactly right, Savrets. But I truly believe the most insidious part of leftist thinking is its hatred of the white picket fence American dream. This guy gets it. He understands what they're really going after. Listen, for those of you who might be new, you don't watch me all the time. If you are just thinking about this as a war on white people, that is misguided. It is not about white people at all. It is about the entire American system. They go after white people because it's the easiest way to create division and to destabilize the system, and that's it. This guy understands what's going on. He's obviously thought about this a lot and he's dug into it a lot. He understands the nuance of it, and that is a step that not enough people get to. And if you have friends and family members who are wondering what's going on, we have to be explaining to them that this is not about white versus black, because it's not. It is about dismantling the system that lifts up the American dream. The left despises the family unit. I recall being called a supporter of the patriarchy because I mentioned I wanted to buy a home and build equity. Not that kind of equity. Perhaps the worst treatment comes from my own kind. My husband and I have been mocked by gay men in Philadelphia for living in the suburbs and wanting to start a family. When I mentioned that I rekindled my relationship with my more conservative mother, they say I should have cut her out entirely because of her beliefs, as they did with their family. Savret says there's a video I made to help the world. Watch it. Well, email it to me, Savrets. Email it to me. I refuse to do so. They say family is something you can create, which I don't necessarily deny, but to disavow and disown your family for ideological differences is not good for society. I don't know what he's pointing to here. Let's see. Let's see what he's pointing to. If you think that isn't happening, read this. And he pointed to this article, Family Estrangement, Why Adults Are Cutting Off Their Parents. Holy crap. I'm going to read that, but I'm not going to do it today. Let's go back to this article. I'm not sure what the end goal is for the left, but I know it took me down a terrible and lonely path. I do know that the divide isn't even. By and large, white, educated liberals are far more likely to disavow those on the right. I'm not a social scientist, but my experience coming from a rural conservative town and moving to multiple liberal cities has shown me that the opinions I share have only been tolerated in one environment. My conservative family didn't disown me, I disowned them. That's what I find, or what I found, I mean, up until this year. I think conservatives are starting to disavow people. We actually had this talk in my local Zoom call today about should conservatives be canceling in the same way that the left cancels. My my position on this is that they should not. Because if conservatives push back, and I know that there are many commentators that say if the left is going to cancel, we should cancel too. I think that is a fundamentally misguided strategy. First of all, for people like me who left the left, it makes you look no different than them. I look at conservatives, the same conservatives that I supported in 2020, I look at them now and they are indistinguishable from the left that I left. They are indistinguishable because they're doing the same cancel nonsense. And I don't think it's right and I don't think it's correct. You have to fight for what you want, not do what you don't want. If you're saying that you don't want cancel culture, then canceling your opponents, canceling people because they disagree with you is exactly the wrong move because you're not acting like you don't want cancel culture. The key to behavior change, there's a really simple formula. If you want to change your behavior, develop a new habit, here's what it is. Let me just lay it out. Think, speak, do. Think, speak, do. When you're trying to change something in your life, whether that be a micro or a macro thing, the first thing you need to do is think about what you want. What is the vision for what you're trying to achieve? Get it very clear in your head. Once you think what you want, the next thing you need to do is speak it out loud. There is a difference between thinking something in your head and speaking it out into the world. Things start to become tangible when we speak them into the world. Once you've developed a clear vision and you've started making it tangible by speaking it into the world, then you need to do it. You need to act as though the person who wants that vision that you already created, you need to act like that. And so if your vision is, I don't like cancel culture, and then you run around canceling people, you are acting in exact opposite of what needs to be done. If you don't want cancel culture, you cannot be canceling people. It is exactly the opposite. David says it is not about being white, just white is where they can sink the knife the deepest. They want power over even those they champion. That is exactly correct. They want power and control over everyone. This is why every 4 years when the presidential election comes up, the Democrats start playing the race game. Not because they care about helping Black people and Black communities, because they do not. We just did an article the other day about how 77% of high school students in Baltimore City schools are reading at a kindergarten or first grade level. Democrats have been running Baltimore for a long, long time. Democrats do not care about lifting up underserved Black communities, and we need to stop pretending they do. They only use it to gain more power. That's it. I'm proud to say I've turned away from the left, but even if I hadn't, my family would still have loved me. No longer will I listen to a side that says they don't matter. Family values matter, and family matters more. Family brings us together and keeps us together, while the leftist ideologies I encountered along the way only divide us all. Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing your story. I think the more people that share stories like this, the more people are going to wake up. And I do believe our number one priority, or at least a very high level priority, has got to be waking people up. Listen, no offense to conservatives watching, but I know I know many of you in the chat, and I know you know that what I'm saying is true. Conservatives are not going to be the ones to fight back. I wanted them to be. I desperately wanted them to be. It's not going to come from the right. They don't do it. It is not part of their culture. I'm not saying none of them do it, because some of them do. Here and there, you'll have people who start to speak up and fight back, but by and large, they don't do it. The only way that we can rally enough people in order to fight back against what the left is doing to this country is by waking up more people in the middle, is by red pilling more people. And every single time people tell a story about their walkaway moment, the moment where they decided to leave the left, how they knew it was too crazy for them to continue, this helps to wake people up. And that has got to be one of our highest priorities in this little game. Alex S. says, parallel structures, parallel economy, parallel society that's independent of mass psychosis. We welcome those who wake up and mock anyone outside. No, I don't think this is going to work. I don't believe that creating parallel structures in a parallel society is going to work. Again, because I'm sorry, conservatives don't do things. And Charles, I appreciate you, Charles, but you're making an excuse right now because we have jobs, families, and other obligations. Guys, people on the left have jobs too. People on the left have jobs. We need to stop pretending that people on the left don't have jobs, and that is the only reason why the right doesn't do things is you have jobs and they don't. That is fundamentally not true. I'm going to tell you guys hard truths when you need to hear them. It is not true. It is an excuse. But Charles, I do agree with this one. My goal right now is to try to make myself cancel-proof so I can be more outspoken. Yes. That is exactly what you need to do. Create multiple streams of income. Make sure if you do consulting work, you have cancellation clauses in your contracts. I write all about all of this in my book. I have a whole chapter on how to on what to do if you're canceled and becoming cancel-proof. That should be the goal. You've got to make yourself uncancelable.